There's been an influence of the crypto market structure on the equity markets, right? And I think if we go back to January 2021 when we had those GameStop events, what we had was a large number of investors that were mostly crypto traders that were kind of trading equities for the first time and getting a very different experience. We've had major changes since then. We've shortened the settlement date, T2 to T1. There's this demand or a need for 24-hour trading. Notional trading is another one. You can buy a fractional coin, but you can't buy a fractional of a share. There's been an enormous amount of influence on the crypto markets, on the equity markets, and I think it's going to continue. And I also think that the equity markets are going to have an influence on how crypto markets, eventually take their final form as regulation kind of comes into the place.
What safeguards should regulators prioritize for Chinese securities?
Delisting Chinese securities is not a new topic. We've had it occur back in 2021 when under executive order, Donald Trump delisted 3 Chinese telecom companies. And then, as you pointed out, in 2022, President Biden also delisted a handful of Russian securities when they invaded Ukraine. There's been a heightened awareness on this, given some recent events that have taken place. We have talks of tariffs, we have talks of Senate hearings that are going on here. So there is a concern among the industry here that, given our past experiences, that if there was some type of a broad delisting of securities, how would that impact investor confidence? If these delistings do occur, they'll occur under one of 2 ways. One, through an executive order. The second would be a delisting that it would be organized and run by the Securities and Exchange Commission under the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act, which is a law which is in place. It's been in place for around 5 years now. There's around 100 or so companies that are on this list that have not been compliant to the disclosures that they need to make here. So our role here is that we just want to make sure that if this does happen, if there is some type of broad delisting that takes place, that regulators and the people responsible understand the ramifications, that this impacts not just the equity, it impacts the ADRs, it impacts options, it impacts ETFs, and making sure that there's no investor confidence issues that can arise from it.
What impact has the Women in Finance program had?
It was an effort that started 10 years ago, and as we all know, starting efforts is a lot easier than maintaining them. We're very proud that that this effort in its 10th year is bigger and better than it was in its first year, and there's been some very steady progress along the way here. How do we mark progress in it? There's a couple of ways. One is just the amount of women that are up on the stage during these conferences. We do feel that in the beginning, when we started this effort, we would go to a conference and there would not be women up on the stage. Just through basic things around building out databases of women who are subject matter experts, engaging with them, having them, participate in the conference is probably the thing that we're most proudest about. After that, we are doing things around mentorship, putting women with 5 to 7 years of experience in the same room as more senior women, and generating some mentorship and sponsorship around it, and also writing articles around it, raising the awareness of it. And then another concrete way that we really have helped here is just around all the licensing requirements that FINRA has. So there was a time when, if you practice in the industry, you had a Series 7 exam. When you left your firm, that exam had a very short shelf life. Your license would expire, and you cannot take continuing education. Working with FINRA, we help them design what they call the SIE program now, which means the license lasts longer and you're able to take continuing education while you're in between jobs.
What specific pain points with the Consolidated Audit Trail need urgent resolution?
The idea around this is to build a robust, centralized repository of trade data that a regulator would find useful in their oversight and regulation of the marketplace here. But unfortunately, as you pointed out, it's been plagued. It's been plagued by cost, funding models, questionable mandates as far as what information needs to be reported and how quickly it needs to be reported, and the overall governance of it. As an industry advocate, we want the best regulators, the best exchanges, best broker deals, best everything. To have the best regulator, they have to have the tools that they need to do their job. However, this cat has taken on a life of its own. It needs to be revisited. It needs to be revisited as far as the scope of it and the cost of it and the governance around it. And it needs to be redesigned in a more practical way to make it an efficient tool.
Does the pattern day trader rule need to change?
When this rule was put in place, it was put in place to protect investors, but also protect the firms. Because back then, intraday risk controls, when it was designed, did not exist. So this was a rule that was there to protect firms from having, activity that they could not monitor intraday. Now, obviously, it's years and years later, and there are a lot of firms out there that are monitoring intraday risk activity very well. So on that side of the coin, there's really not a need for it. Now, on the other side, as far as the investors, we have investors coming in now. What the definitions around what a pattern day trader is, the criteria for meeting that standard are so low in today's marketplace. When you think about the ability and the ease for people to open an account, get education, and engage in the marketplace, and how they can, from time to time, trip over this rule and then be shut out of the marketplace.